Welcome to Certzy. In this video, I'll cover tips for choosing a good photo or illustration that will back up the message you're communicating about public health or research. All right, here's what you need to know to get started. The first is that in many cases, there are best practices for images and photos, depending on the topic that you're working on. I'm going to go through some injury related examples in this video, but I know, for instance, that other topics like mental health and vaccination also have best practices. I know I've seen some research out there that suggests that using photos of needles, for example, or photos of people wincing as they get shots makes people less likely to get vaccines, probably because, they're afraid of the needles and the pain. So if you do a little bit of research before you start, then you'll know if there are any best practices in your topic area that you should be following. The second is that you really do need to review every image carefully. A lot of photos and images out there are showing incorrect behavior or other behaviors that we just don't want to demonstrate. So check every image carefully, especially images from stock sites and any images generated by AI or artificial intelligence. AI images are now showing up on stock photo sites, or you might be using an AI generator yourself. So if you are using AI or you are looking at a photo that's generated by AI, do look at that very carefully just to make sure everything in that photo is correct. Okay, the third is that we always want to use images legally. So you could use your own, you can buy them from stock sites. Sometimes you can buy them straight from the graphic design software that you're using. There are also free stock sites out there, and we do have a list of those over at certsy.org. So go check that out if you need some free stock photos. But the other thing that you can do if you have a photo that you'd like to use and you don't know where it came from, you can use what we call a reverse image search to check for copyright or Creative Commons or other types of restriction on those images. Um, Once you know what any restrictions are, you can use that image legally and appropriately. And if you don't know how to do the reverse image search, that video is linked in the description box below. And then the final thing is to always provide credit or attribution as it's required by the owner. Some licenses, like Creative Commons, will always have an attribution requirement. And then, there's probably also some limits on what you can do with the image. So just make sure that you're using these images legally and appropriately. And if you're not sure how to check for that, watch the video that I have linked down below on image licenses. All right, let's get going. The first tip is to always show the recommended actions or behavior. I'm going to use an example here of a sledding campaign that we've done. And one of our main messages was that we wanted to encourage kids to wear helmets. And so we wanted to show that in our image. And so that's what we did when we looked through the photos. We started with kids that were wearing helmets while they were sledding. So once we found those photos, we then looked to some of our other points in that campaign to try to find a great photo. And so, two of the other points that we want to highlight in our sledding safety campaign were riding a sled that could be steered and riding feet first. So, as you can see, this photo does not have those two things. So, we can't use this photo despite the child wearing the helmet. So instead, we went with this photo here on the right, which actually met all of the points that we wanted to hit in our safety campaign. The child is wearing a helmet, she's riding alone, she's riding a sled that can be steered, and she's riding feet first. So, again, all of the points that we wanted to hit in our safety campaign. Okay, so the second tip is to check the background of photos as well. And this looks not like a nice photo of a child's bedroom that at first glance doesn't seem to have any major concerns. But if you look closely, and I know it's hard to see in this photo, but if you look very closely, you can see that there are window blind cords in this child's room. I work in child safety, and we know that children have been strangled by window blind cords and thus are not safe to have in your kid's room. And so we don't want to show that in photos. So, again, checking the background of your photo to make sure that anything in the background meets any safety requirements or behavioral requirements that you're looking for will help you get a great photo. Okay, the next tip is to back up your message whenever possible. The example here is a photo that we used for a carbon monoxide safety campaign. And the message of this campaign was just asking people to install carbon monoxide alarms in their homes. But one of the secondary messages, one of our backup messages, was to get outside if your alarm goes off. So even though this photo is just of the alarm, it's backing up my message because right here on the photo it says move to fresh air. And so that backs up my message of going outside if your alarm goes off. So I just thought that this was a really nice photo for that campaign. The next step is to reflect your audience. There's nothing wrong with this photo necessarily. You know, the child's wearing a helmet, he appears to be on a bike path of some type and away from traffic. But if you look closely, this post is aimed at adults. And so, obviously, if you're going to aim something at adults, you should show adults in the photograph. And while the child in this photo is following correct behaviors, the visual element just doesn't reflect the text or the audience for this post. Okay, which leads me to my last point. The last tip is to reflect your topic, and this one gets a little more tricky. So, again, there's nothing wrong with this photo. It's not a bad photo, it's not incorrect in any way. It just, for me at least, doesn't necessarily say burn safety, and that's what this topic, this blog is about. Now, I've worked in this space and I know that finding activities to do in the kitchen that are away from the stove is often a recommended activity for burn safety. And so, if the blog were about that, then this might be a really great photo, you know. But I clicked through to the blog, and kitchen safety is just one part of a larger set of recommendations about burn safety. And it also talks about fireplaces and things like that. And it doesn't specifically recommend finding other activities in the kitchen as a way to keep kids safer around stoves. It does say to keep kids away from stoves, but it doesn't say how. And so, maybe a slightly better photo for this blog might have been something that demonstrated one of the specific recommendations in the blog. So, again, this isn't a bad photo, but I think, maybe a slightly better photo would have, again, highlighted something that the reader would find in the blog. Okay, well, those are my top 4 tips for choosing a great photo for public health and research. Check out the other videos in this series and in the description box below. And as always, let us know in the comments if you have other topics that you'd like to see. Thanks for watching. Looking for more HealthCom content? Check out all of our trainings and resources at cirtc.org.